The countries of Westalis and Estonia have been locked in a bitter cold war for years, one side doing its best to keep the peace, while the other is constantly trying to get the upper hand and reignite the East and West War. Whether it's assassinating foreign diplomats, staging a fake attack by Westalis, or simply flying a massive airship called the Enormity into Westalis and starting with a surprise attack. Any of these events could have sparked a war between the two nations. Any of these could have led to thousands or hundreds of thousands of deaths. And this is where Wise comes in, with agents all throughout Estonia doing everything in their power to keep the peace. And the most skilled among them is Twilight, Wise's top agent who's been responsible for saving Westalis many times over, from infiltrating and taking down terrorist groups to stopping a full-on nuclear missile attack. And with tensions on the rise thanks to the National Unity Party of Estonia, Twilight has been given a new mission, to get close to the leader of said party, Donovan Desmond, and leak any and all information he can back to Wise. But to do so, he's going to need to get/do a few things. A. Have a child. B. Get said child to pass the entrance exam to one of the most prestigious schools in the country. And C. Get a wife. Yeah, that's the right order. Huh. Enter Anya Forger and Yor Forger, the other two members of this very strange family that each have their own secrets alongside Twilight, who himself is taking up the role of a father as Loid Forger. This is Operation Strix, the most delicate and long-running mission of Twilight's career to date. But how qualified is he, really? How good of a spy is Twilight? And if I were to play him in D&D, would his build be any good? Well, that's what we're going to find out here today, and while we're at it, we're also going to look into his strangely strong wife, and the child who always seems to know things that she really shouldn't. So let's take a look, and of course we are going to start with Twilight. Twilight, or under his current identity, Loid Forger, the man of 100 faces, a spy famous throughout Westalis and infamous in Estonia. We actually know very little about Loid's past before the show, other than that as a child he lost his parents to the war between the two countries, and to make sure that no other children would suffer like he did, Loid threw away his identity, his dreams of having a family, or any sort of normal life. And throughout his time as a spy, Twilight would disguise himself as the leader of an Estonian criminal organization, date the daughter of said leader, receive stolen Westalis art, and take on a multitude of different personas and much more. It isn't a stretch to call him a master of disguise, being able to perfectly mimic others' voices and mannerisms, on top of somehow being able to make completely perfect recreations of other people's faces in the form of these hyper-realistic masks. And so far, the only people that have seen through his disguises either have supernatural powers or nearly supernatural senses. Twilight is also well versed in gunplay and hand-to-hand combat, able to take out 38 separate thugs in just a few seconds each. Sadly, this new mission would require Twilight to do something he hates, relying on outside help. In order to complete Operation Strix, he would have to assume the identity of Loid Forger, adopt the child, which was somehow the easy part, and get married. Unfortunately, due to a shortage of female spies at the moment, Twilight would have to find a civilian woman willing to get married in just a couple days, so he's got his work cut out for him. And while Loid does his best to get Anya to study, we can check out exactly what we're working with when it comes to Loid's stats and everything else. First is his lineage, and yes, he is a human. I could have taken the, easy route and make him a changeling for some really hyper-realistic stuff, but it's really clear that those are disguises and not something he turns into or any form of magic, so we're just going to stick with human. I went ahead and used that to give him the skilled feat, since Loid here is the definition of a skill monkey. Now, there is no origin for a child orphaned by war who threw away everything to prevent more war. So I just made one myself, called the Spy, and gave him the Alert feat. Loid is always on high alert for attacks, and even turned this ambush back on his attackers in just a few seconds. He also gets Stealth and Deception here. This man lies like it's his job, which it is. Now when it comes to his stats, Loid is a little all over the place, with the only outlier being his low strength. I would have also loved to have his intelligence be higher, but using standard array means we only have so much to work with. But that does mean he can have a 16 in both dexterity and charisma, which are both used for a lot of his skills. He also needs some wisdom, but he can cover for the lowish wisdom and intelligence a little later down the line. Okay, so back to Loid, since it looks like Anya's all tuckered out. As a spy, Loid is skilled in many things. We already went over his ability to mimic voices, and his strange supply of hyper-realistic masks. But he's no slouch in a fight either, and while he would rather avoid any direct conflict, Loid can and will throw hands if necessary. And on top of that, his talent for disguise is so good that the Estonian SSS still have no idea what Twilight actually looks like, even after trying to track him down for years. One of their higher ranking members even happens to be Yor's brother, and despite having been over to their house multiple times, still has no idea he's dealing with Twilight. He does still hate him though, but that's for other reasons. Now, I mentioned before how Loid is skilled in hand-to-hand combat, but that's not the only place he excels at when it comes to fighting. He's extremely fast on his feet, walked off a car crash, even if I'm pretty sure he had a concussion or two, and was able to at least hold off an assault from Yor, who may have been drunk at the time, but this lady has gone head to head against a moving car and come out on top. So even if she wasn't at the top of her game, that's really impressive. He's also an expert marksman, but we don't get to see this side of him too often. Off the top of my head, I can think of maybe 2 instances where he uses a gun. One is when he's retrieving some stolen art with the best character in the show, Frankie, and the other one takes place during the movie Code White with him having a gunfight in the airship control room. Oh, and he also did shoot a vest off of a dog while it was mid-jump trying to bite him without hurting the dog, so I guess 3 times. So with all this in mind, figuring out what class is best for the Super Spy Twilight is really easy. Obviously he is going to be a rogue. Him and Nightfall communicate via coded speech all the time, which is just how Thieves' Cant works. He uses expertise on deception, and to help with that low wisdom score, the other one goes into perception. But the most important thing he gets from Rogue is his ability to disguise himself, mimicking voices, mannerisms, and of course, looks, which is going to be a mixture of a few things. The first of which he already has thanks to a high deception modifier, but the Assassin's Tools feature from the Assassin gives him the Disguise Kit for free, which is the best way outside of magic to get his face mask thing. And again, those are clearly not magical. Next up is going to be the Actor feat, because that not only lets him mimic voices, but it also makes his deception checks just better by giving him advantage on them as long as he is trying to convince somebody that he is someone else. And only sitting at level 4, Loid is looking at a +7 deception with advantage, and he is far from done. But before we get more into his spy stuff, Loid does need to be able to handle himself in a fight. So for that reason, he's actually going to hop over to the Monk here. This is where Loid is going to get his frankly insane speed via unarmored movement and unarmored defense. But it also gets him deflect attacks, which is probably the only reason Yor didn't kick his head off when she was drunk. Now Loid didn't really need a subclass from Monk, but you can't just not pick one. And sticking with the stealthy, sneaky vibe Loid has going on is easiest with the Warrior of Shadow. Just reflavor the very limited casts of darkness as smoke grenades, and the dark vision as night vision goggles. And then Loid is ready for more nighttime raids with Frankie. Yes, we all need more Frankie. But with only a total of 3 levels in Monk to grab his hand-to-hand stuff and a few spy gadgets, Loid is sneaking right back over to the Rogue for the last of his 10 levels, meaning he is going to be getting some very important features like Uncanny Dodge. Again, great for not dying when your wife sucker punches you out of a Ferris wheel, purely out of embarrassment. Another round of expertise for acrobatics and investigation. He's not just good at disguising himself, but also sneaking around and gathering info. But a big feature for Loid is going to be reliable talent at level 7 of Rogue. So anytime Loid lies, changes faces, flips out of a moving Ferris wheel, or anything else, he can never roll lower than a 10 before modifiers. And this applies to every skill he's proficient with and every toolkit he's proficient with, which is a total of 8 skills and 3 different tools. Level 8 of Rogue isn't as important, just giving him a +2 bump to his charisma, but that does mean that Loid is working with a minimum deception roll of 23 thanks to a +13 modifier with advantage. Now there are a few things that are a bit redundant, like the level 9 feature Infiltration Expertise, which normally would let Loid mimic voices, but he already got that from the Actor feat, but I guess now he can do it twice just in case that first one wasn't enough. But it does add something, letting Loid mimic handwriting on top of mimicking voices. Plus he can run and gun if he needs to. Now unlike his last ASI, which was just a +2 to charisma, level 10 is actually going to be very important for Loid, because this is what's going to let him read lips thanks to the Observant feat. Now, technically the new version of this changed it, so now it's just another expertise and a search action, but I don't like that, so I'm going to use the old Observant feat, which lets you read lips, and it still comes with the +1 wisdom. And looking over everything again, Loid is going to keep on Rogue for a few more levels to get where I think he is now in the show, or at least close enough. Going all the way to level 15 of Rogue, picking up another +2 to his dexterity, more cunning strike options, and more importantly, Slippery Mind, giving him both charisma and wisdom saving throws. He can also blind people or just knock them out with Devious Strike, since Loid does prefer to go about his missions without killing one if he can avoid it. I guess these guys just kinda had it coming. But real quick before we finish Loid here, I want to see just how good he actually is at deception. With a +4 from charisma, a +12 from expertise, and a minimum roll of 10 thanks to reliable talent, his minimum roll for any deception, persuasion, or disguise check is 26. Plus for those disguise checks, he has advantage. So it's no wonder no one ever sees through his disguises. Loid not only looks like you, he's better at acting like you than you are.
I've warned you before, you gotta keep your emotions out of this. You wanna stay alive, you can't trust anyone. That's just the way it is.
Don't lecture me wearing that face.
No! But you're the one who made it for me! Damn it! I thought I could land a few chicks with that on!
Deceiving a woman that you're dating is a terrible idea.
Are you freaking kidding me?
Okay, super quick break to remind you that if you are liking this content, it would be cool if you could subscribe.
Do it!
I'm making at least 2 team builds a month, possibly more nowadays, and we are really gunning for that 30k by the end of the year, again to meet with our old channel. Also, I know I mentioned it in the last video, but in case anyone missed it, our 10% discount code for Homing the Dude is now a 35% discount for anything on their store. The Wandering Tavern has so much stuff in it to help flesh out like a small arc or a standalone one-shot, or again, you can just rip the NPCs and whatever else you want if that's all you need. So again, code GMG if you're looking for some high quality stuff at a pretty good discount. That is 35% more money for you to spend on dice. Well, that's what I buy at least. Hey, future GMD here real quick, just popping in to remind you that we are doing a homebrew contest that started last week and is running until April 8th. It can be anything ranging from a subclass, a lineage, a feat, whatever you want to make. Just make sure to either send it via email to gamemastersdomain@gmail.com with the homebrew submission in the subject, or put it in the homebrew submissions in our Discord server, linked down below. And while we decided not to do an art contest, if drawing is more your style and you don't want to do something homebrew, feel free to send them in anyway and we will show them when we announce the winners. First place is going to get the dice set we weren't able to ship out for Extra Life, while second and third place are getting $25 gift cards to whatever platform you want, like Steam, Amazon, whatever. And remember, this is running until the 8th of April, and we'll be doing a stream sometime after that showing the winners, so get them in before that. Okay, I'll let you guys get back to the past me. Oh, and there's one more thing I want to mention before we get back to the main part of the video. So you may have noticed something a little different. First off, there's more videos, but also some changes to the editing. And that's because we finally went out and got an editor. We wanted someone who was just as nerdy as us and who actually enjoyed the content we made. And thankfully, we found a goblin willing to do the job. Not the ugly goblin, but a machete goblin. He's going to be working on these team builds for the foreseeable future, and maybe some other stuff. He also might pop into streams too, since I should have more time to actually do that now, so say hi to Machete Goblin in the comments, he's doing some really good work. Also, say hello Goblin if you want, if not you can cut this part out. Yor Briar is seemingly a simple civil servant working at the City Hall, who after a chance meeting with a single father, got married to avoid suspicion by the Ostonian SSS. But much like her husband, Yor has a secret. She's far from just any City Hall clerk, because that is just a cover for her real job. Because while Yor does spend plenty of time either at home with her family, or at City Hall doing paperwork, she also works for the Garden, an organization that, while it has similar goals to Wise, i.e. stopping a war from breaking out, does it in a much more violent way than Wise does. While Wise uses subterfuge and a vast array of spy networks to stop threats before they happen, the Garden simply puts an end to anyone who betrays the country or does anything to put the people of Estonia in danger, like, I don't know, reigniting the East and West War. And Yor happens to be one of their top assassins known as the Thorn Princess. And she's been doing this job for, well, since she was a child. So it's safe to say that Yor is an expert in this field. And despite her work being so grim, Yor doesn't see it that way. She's protecting her country and the people in it by removing dangerous people. And she's not really super violent outside of that. Well, aside from when she's flustered or if Anya needs help. I will say Yor isn't the brightest, but it's not like she's stupid either, just kinda ditzy and easily flustered. And again, I think another custom background, this time called the Hitman, is in order, giving Yor intimidation for obvious reasons, and the Savage Attacker feat. She usually kills pretty quickly with 1 or 2 hits, and the Savage Attacker feat will help her keep that damage consistent. And speaking of Yor in combat, she might be an assassin in terms of her job title, but I would hardly call her style stealthy. She walks right up to whatever building her target is in, and within a few minutes, it is a bloodbath. Yor is incredibly fast, nimble, and superhumanly strong. She put this guy's head through a concrete ceiling and 1v1'd a car. Even more than that, she's casually shrugged off being hit by a different car, shot in the butt, and drinking pufferfish blood / venom. You know, the stuff that's like 1,200 times stronger than cyanide, and all it did was numb the pain she felt from being shot in the butt. And all this pretty easily ties into her stats, with high strength, con, and dex, and the other stats are okay, but nothing to write home about. Also, I had her dump wisdom mostly just for fun, since she always just takes whatever Loid says at face value, and despite the other girls at work clearly having something against her at the start of the show, she never really notices it. But really when her job requires her to be quick and deadly, but not necessarily stealthy, Yor doesn't really need to worry about that, because no one can call the cops if she doesn't leave anyone to call the cops. Now, like I said before, Yor's job might be as an assassin, but for the most part that's not how she fights. And sure, sometimes she'll do a surprise attack, but even then she asks if she can take their lives first, not that their answer really matters. And by the end of the night, Yor is the only one left standing, usually covered in blood. Now this isn't to say that Yor can't be sneaky or use some rogue features down the line, but it's just not her main class. And when it came to figuring out what class that should actually be, I decided that I wanted a way to show off her super high strength without actually jacking up her stats beyond the limit of 20, which I think is best done with a crit build. Hitting extra hard just means more damage. And the first step to any good crit fishing build is a fighter, more specifically the champion fighter, which doubles Yor's crit chance. She also gets Remarkable Athlete, giving her advantage on athletics checks, and when she does crit, she can duck out of the fight without any fear of an opportunity attack. She's going to grab the unarmed fighting style, since she is very skilled with her bare hands, stabbing through this huge pumpkin with just her fingertips, kicking a car to stop it, and she knows pressure points, even on cows. And Yor is actually going to stick with the fighter for a full 11 levels, getting a few feats along the way like Great Weapon Master for a bonus action attack after critting. The Piercer feat also gives Yor a special effect when she crits, in this case letting her roll even more extra damage, and this isn't a once per turn, so if she rolls multiple crits in a row, that damage is really going to stack up. And her last ASI from Fighter is going to be a very simple +2 bump to her dexterity, followed by her last feature from Champion, Heroic Warrior, meaning every turn she gets a free use of Heroic Inspiration, meaning she gets a free advantage on top of her increased crit chance for 3 attacks per action. And all that is a pretty solid start for a crit fishing build. Free advantage once per turn with no drawbacks, an increased crit chance, extra damage, and extra damage on crits. But she can still do more. Yor can get much stronger crits if she multiclasses into a rogue. Look, I said she wasn't an assassin, not that she couldn't be a rogue. And surprisingly enough, not only does going over to rogue give her better crits, but it also helps with her being super strong because she can put her expertise into athletics along with intimidation. But the main things Yor is actually here for are 2 features from the Swashbuckler subclass, which I realize I do kind of use a lot, but come on, it's a good subclass for this type of character, mostly because Yor works alone, and without Rakish Audacity she wouldn't be able to get sneak attack very often. And again, she is very nimble and acrobatic, so fancy footwork helps keeping her out of harm's way. The same thing goes for Uncanny Dodge and Evasion. This girl casually dodges gunfire, and not just normal handguns or rifles, but full-on mounted anti-air machine guns. She just dodges it. Oh, and this next part isn't really a big deal, she only ever mentions it once, but Yor can and does use poisons from time to time, so the poison option from Cunning Strike can cover that if needed. But who would bother covering their dagger in poison if your dagger is just going to go sailing through somebody's head? But obviously the big thing for the crits here is going to be sneak attack. With 7 total levels of rogue, she is adding 4d6 sneak attack for one of her attacks. And assuming that she crits at least once per turn, seeing as she has an increased crit rate with advantage, she could be dishing out upwards of 71 damage per turn without action surge. Maybe don't mess with Yor. Sure, she's kind and mostly gentle, but if she thinks you are even a possible threat to Anya, she is going to kill everyone in the room, and then take Anya out for ice cream.
You never should have messed with little Anya, cause I'm gonna make you pay!
Huh? She jumped off the damn bridge?!
Yes. Hello, police? Seems he had a car accident behind Northtown Park. You think you can come get him? Me? I'm the housewife that called earlier. I gotta go.
Okay, I'm sure you've all been waiting, but what do I plan on making the 5-ish-year-old child for a D&D character? How am I going to turn a child into someone that could, in theory, melt your face off with a basic cantrip? Well, I have a few things in mind, so let's see what exactly we're working with here. And normally here's where I would go into the character's past a little bit and see what's made them into who they are now. But Anya is at most 5 years old. She doesn't really have a past. She's still in her very early formative years. All we really have about her past is that she was raised by her mother in some sort of lab setting, with tests being done on her and possibly her mom given some recent manga stuff. And this is either the reason for or because Anya has the ability to read minds. And Anya is constantly using this power. She did it when she first met Loid to trick him into adopting her. She used it to just barely pass the entrance exam to Eden, and she will continue to use it in irresponsible ways because she's a child. Now it's a little unclear if she has to actively activate her power, or if it's just kinda always going and she has to focus to get any deeper thoughts. There was an instance where she was able to pick a single person out of a crowd by listening to a bunch of people's thoughts at once, but this was clearly past her limit because not only did she pretty much pass out right after doing so, but she also got a nosebleed. So her power is very limited right now, but I'll do my best. Starting once again with a custom background, this time called the Experiment. Now, we aren't sure exactly what happens to Anya in those labs other than that she didn't like it, but we know it was for peace, so knowing Anya, it likely wasn't going to be anything good. And given her powers, I decided to give her the alert feat, because she can just kind of listen to conversations through walls and stuff, and might actually be able to detect a sneak attack if the attacker is thinking too hard about it, since she doesn't need to see her target in order to read their minds, just be within a certain proximity. And for the same reason, I gave this background Insight and Deception. Not because she's good at either skill really, but for Insight she can just read minds, and for Deception her lies are usually so outlandish that no one's even surprised anymore. Now as for her stats, well, Anya's a kid, so here you go. She's got good charisma and wisdom. Again, not for any actual training or good perception, just getting stray thoughts from people around her so she knows what's up. And yeah, she's dumping dexterity. At first it was going to be intelligence, but given that she actually is only 5, she's pretty smart for her age. Now here's the thing. Like I've said many times already, Anya's only 5 years old. And outside of Yor teaching her how to throw a punch, nice form by the way, she has no combat applications. She's a kid. So while Yor and Loid are on the higher end when it comes to levels, Anya is just starting out. But her mind reading powers did give me a little bit to work with when it comes to what her class is. Just don't expect a lot of levels. She's lucky she got any at this point. Anya's only real ability is to read other people's minds, or even animals' minds. And while she can't speak directly into their heads, I feel like that's kind of the next step for her if she was to get stronger with her mental abilities. That, and if I want the Detect Thoughts spell, she kinda needs to be at least level 3, so she's gonna have a few extra things that I feel like she might get in the future. And thankfully, the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer subclass is all about mental stuff, giving her Telepathic Speech at level 3, and giving her the Detect Thoughts spell at the same level, which again is the only one she really uses. But because Anya doesn't really have a limit on how much she can use her powers outside of reading too many minds at once, I thought grabbing a few more mind-based spells would at least give her a few more chances to do stuff, and most of it can be flavored as her using her mind reading to her advantage, like the Charm Person spell. Sure, she can't control people, but she can read their minds and figure out exactly what to say to get what she wants. The same thing goes for Shield. If she knows exactly how and where someone is going to throw something at her, she can just dodge to where it won't be. She did this exact thing during a dodgeball tournament at school. And that's kinda it. Anya is a level 3 sorcerer with a couple spells that if she uses them right, should be perfect for turning her into an Imperial Scholar. You know, as long as she doesn't punch anyone else.
I thought about asking her to play my wife, but I'd better not.
I thought about asking him to play my boyfriend at the party, but that could easily end in bloodshed, so I'd better not.
Oh, poor me. I'm so lonely because I've got no mama.
Okay, so first off I want to apologize if I sounded weird at all during this video. I've been having some throat issues. I've been swapping my sleep schedule, so that can really wreck the body. That and the apartment above me is still doing construction all throughout the day, so if you can hear that in the background, I apologize. But that aside, these builds are actually pretty fun to make. And if anyone here started over on the old channel first, you may remember that I actually built Loid and Yor before in a short format. A few things have changed obviously since we have new rules, but that actually did make things a lot easier. Even Anya was fun because of how restrictive her build is. I do wish I could have added my favorite character Frankie into the builds, but he is at most a very useful NPC and not really part of the main group. He is the best character in the show though, fight me.
Hey, it's time to party!
Anyways, thank you to my patrons once again, you guys are awesome, and make sure to go show our editor some love in the comments. But that is going to do it for today, I will see you all next time, and as always, have a wonderful day.